Like the previous Way of the Samurai game, which was released back in 2002, Way of the Samurai 2 depicts a very interesting time in Japan's history in a very unique fashion. Unfortunately, it sort of goes downhill past the very cool concept. The game takes place in the late 19th century when Japan is undergoing some serious social upheaval. Basically, the samurai caste is being phased out in favor of sort of a new social structure, and you, as a wandering, masterless samurai, are just trying to make ends meet in this changing society. So the game allows you to choose your own destiny in this small town in which it takes place. It lets you side with any of the different factions sort of vying for superiority in the town, and basically go around and do things as you will. It's not a linear game at all. It actually has more than 10 different endings and lets you basically become a vagrant or go around and wantonly kill civilians or try to keep the peace, do anything you want in this little town. The entire game is set in this town of Amahara, which consists of 10 specific locations. You can sort of freely teleport from one area to the next at pretty much any time, and the areas themselves are actually very, very small, only about the size of like a street corner or something like that. So what happens is you'll initially just wander around, not knowing what's where and so forth, and eventually you'll figure out which are the points of interest in the different regions. You'll find that there's a gang, there's sort of a police magistrate's office, there are also townspeople that you can help in these various locations, and they'll send you on little fetch quests or kill quests or things of that nature, and ask that you complete these assignments in a certain period of time. The game doesn't take place in real time, but time does pass over the course of the game as you transition from one area to the next. Basically, the entire game takes place over the period of 10 days, and during this time, you're, again, free to do things however you wish, and there's replay value to be found in replaying the game over and over and trying to find different outcomes and trying to help other characters, whereas you might have hindered them the last time you played, and so on and so forth. The game suffers from having a pretty poor translation, actually, so you'll have to make these very important decisions in the dialogue, but you often won't really know what it is that you're committing to by choosing from the different options. That creates a pretty big problem in the game, and also it just has a pretty confusing structure altogether. The thing is, the game is very story-driven, and the cutscenes cannot be skipped. Also, the game always starts out in exactly the same fashion, with your samurai sort of starving and being nursed back to health by a little girl. So you'll get very used to seeing these early sequences over and over and over again, and all you can do is sort of fast forward through the dialogue. But again, for a game that's built all around having lots of replay value, Way of the Samurai 2 sort of falls flat because it has these mechanisms in place that sort of discourage you from going back into the experience more than oh so many times. The combat is arguably the only fleshed out portion of the game, and even it suffers from some pretty noticeable problems. You've got a wide variety of moves. You can execute horizontal and vertical slashes in various combos. You can find a ton of different swords which enable you to use different sword fighting techniques and things like that. The thing is, fighting from a defensive posture and parrying enemies' attacks is really the only way to go, you'll find. Otherwise, you'll just pretty much get beat up on all the time and you'll get killed. But if you stand there and defend, your defense is practically impenetrable, and then you can deflect the enemy's blade and cut them right down. So really make a long story short that way. So the combat is unbalanced, the rest of the game structure is confusing, but the game does have these sort of cool moments to it and these interesting features that just don't quite pan out. But the way in which you can interact with the different factions and get the other factions to react to you accordingly is pretty cool. Like, for instance, if you attack civilians wantonly, then the magistrates are going to be on your tail, or if you attack gang members, then the gang will attack you on sight. Things like that. So if you bear with the game, you'll find that there's some cool little touches, but nothing about the experience really gels together to form a cohesive game. Nevertheless, if you enjoy the concept of Way of the Samurai and want to experience a relatively authentic view of 19th century Japan, complete with some seedy stuff like drug use and lots of blood geysers and good stuff like that, then Way of the Samurai 2 does offer that. It's just that you'll need to turn a blind eye to a few rough edges here and there in order to get the most out of it.